Should we get started?
Whatever you say.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We are delighted to have you for the Acosphere Instagram Live today, 10th of September. And our guest today for the conversation is no other than Mr. Dan Shefet, attorney with IBM Europe, Paris. He has founded also the Cabinet Shefet, a law firm in Paris, advisor to the Parliamentary Committee in France on anti-Semitism, anti-racist acts, radicalization, and the Parliamentary Committee on Deliberate Falsehood in Singapore, the Parliamentary Committee on Free Speech in Ukraine, and the Élysée Palace on IT law and extraterritoriality. He founded the Association for Accountability and Internet Democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, this actually protects our rights all across Europe and actually in the world now. Moots Court Judge at the European Court of Human Rights, instructor at UNICRI, the United Nations Interregional Crime and Justice Research Institute, a frequent speaker at international conferences on IT law, including ANSI, OECD, cyber law and cybersecurity, American Bar Association, Information for All, MAPIC, European Data Ethics Forum, Global Forum, UNESCO, and UNESCO Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainability Development. He's an author. Look, ladies and gentlemen, I could go on for a long time. We have an incredible guest today, and we're delighted to welcome you, Dan. So welcome.
Lovely being, as I already told you, it was love at first sight.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me get to the first question. You have had a career that started with philosophy. You actually studied philosophy and international law, and as foreseen by the theme of your thesis, which was the international status of both refugees, already showing what your focus would be going forward. You are also known for your work relating to, I quote the name of your report, to the Council of Europe, the creation of the Internet Ombudsman Institution in charge of assessing the legal and illegal nature of Internet content, and the report to the UNESCO policy options and regulatory mechanism for managing radicalization on the Internet. And finally, you are the founder of AAID, the Association of Accountability and Internet Democracy, to name just a few of the many, many things that you do. Dan, please tell us your story.
Well, first of all, Gilles, you got your facts right.
Good, good.
That's great. That's very, very good. Yeah.
That's excellent.
A lot of people don't get their facts right, but you did get your facts right, so that's fine. That's fine. You studied philosophy, as you say, and my advice to anybody, especially those that have children and don't know what to do today, when they finish high school and they want to study something, study philosophy. Because what happens is that if you start studying a specific subject like computer engineering or law or whatever you want to study, you get so engrossed in that subject and you become an idiot. You become an idiot in the sense that you know your subject and nothing else. And that's a real problem. That's a real, real, real problem. So start studying philosophy. Really, this is 2 years. I did mine for almost 6 years. And in parallel, I studied law. And I'm so pleased that I did that because it gives me an approach to different cultural debates, different cultural views, different cultural values that really, as a lawyer, show me that everybody is right. You know what I mean? Everybody's right. Everybody is right where he comes from. Nobody is going to fight for a position that he knows is wrong. And in order to understand that, even though his or her position is the opposite of yours, you can't be right, both of you, right? Yeah. From a logical point of view. Maybe from a quantum physics point of view, you can be right both at the same time, but that's what we'll be discussing. So in order to understand really why the guy sitting in front of you who says the opposite of you and fights for the opposite of you with his life, why he thinks that he's right.
Yeah.
Only philosophy will help you. It's not a sufficient condition, but it's a necessary condition to grasp those differences in the right perspective. So that's why I recommend everybody should start studying philosophy, and that's why the legal work I've been doing has been focusing on international law. You mentioned the boat people report that I wrote.
Yeah.
I wrote that after Vietnam, Cambodia, and unfortunately, it is one of those subjects that never goes away. I mean, what we see now in Lampedusa and the Mediterranean is exactly the same problem of some poor people escaping persecution. The alternative being that they'll be either tortured to death or die a quick death, and therefore flee their country. And so, what are their legal rights? The major issue is, unfortunately, my friend, is not going to go away.
Yeah, yeah, completely get it. So let me build on this. Tell us a couple of anecdotes, because you have a rich portfolio of anecdotes. Tell us a couple of anecdotes that you have actually lived that were challenges or opportunities for you during your whole career, so that we have a bit more on your story.
A couple of anecdotes. Well, there's an interesting thing here, which is that when I wrote my thesis about the boat people, I really didn't imagine that could in any way impact on a professional career as a lawyer. It was kind of like a thesis that you write and then you put it away somewhere, hope that somebody is going to read it, and that's the kind of thing that you do.
Yeah.
So after I wrote it, some 20 years after I wrote it, I got a case as a lawyer in Vietnam, actually. And of course, the bulk of that report was with Vietnam and Cambodia. And this was a very important case because I was actually representing clients that was supposed to build up a holiday resort in the middle of Vietnam, in Da Nang, which is a beautiful lagoon.
Yeah.
And so we were supposed to meet with one of the really important real estate players in Da Nang, and his reputation was that he was an arrogant, really very unpleasant guy. So we went to meet with this guy, and sure enough, he was pretty arrogant and he was pretty unpleasant. And we were sitting there, the three of us. I was there with my two clients in this big room, and he opens the meeting. And so I interrupted and I said, listen, you have a Canadian accent. Did you live in Canada? And then he looks at me, this arrogant guy, and he says, yeah, what? Why do you ask? So I said, listen, telling from your age, you're like 50-something, you're Vietnamese, very educated, speak with a Canadian accent. I think that you were one of the boat people, because actually the Canadians took one of the biggest quarters of the boat people when they had the discussions back in Geneva. And he kept looking at me, and I said, you should know that I actually wrote the legal report that was one of the bases for these negotiations. So this guy who had this reputation of being extremely arrogant, gets up, walks around the table, embraces me, kisses me all over. You should have seen the impact that had on my clients. You know, I saved the day for everybody.
Yes.
So this just shows how life is, right?
Yeah.
This guy was a genius. He was sitting on a boat somewhere. He could have drowned.
Yeah.
Fortunately, he was saved, and he made a fantastic career. And he credited me to a great extent with that. Of course, my real contribution was more symbolic than anything else. This is a wonderful anecdote of what happens in real life.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, indeed, and that made you close to him, and right away close to his culture, and he felt, you know, very emotionally connected to you. That is amazing. Any other anecdotes?
Absolutely. From a business point of view, you can imagine we got whatever we wanted.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And whenever he comes to Paris, you give me a phone call, right? So this is I really think that this is a wonderful story, because you really never know what happens in life. Yeah. You never know. Yeah. And this really, to me, was a revelation. Indeed. It's a true revelation.
Indeed.
You want more stories? Do you want more stories?
Yes, if you can. You know, everybody is very enthusiastic about your story. I know we have a couple of legal people, lawyers trained, and they actually, one said that philosophy should really be the first subject. And I think that person has actually studied philosophy also before she studied the law. So yeah, any other story?
Well, you know, it's funny that, so the story that I will tell you is more philosophy than law. but it shows something about the importance of philosophy. So I was working. This was when I studied philosophy. It was like the third year, and was very much into formal logics, right? You know, you distinguish between material logics and formal logics.
Yeah.
And formal logics is something that they were very good at in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
The scholastics, and they created these paradoxes, right?
Yeah.
And some of these paradoxes are still very hard to crack, and some of them haven't been cracked yet.
Yeah.
So, so I was working on one of those, and I didn't sleep, and I didn't eat, and I didn't do anything for 3 months, just thinking about this ridiculous paradox. And of course, it had no importance whatsoever. But to me, it was life and death to come up with a logical solution to this thing. And I shall never forget that actually I did solve it. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I had this nanosecond, which I would just love to be able to have again, but I think I'll never have it again, of feeling that I was part of the universe. Because this intellectual illumination, and it is really what it was very, very, very strong. It was like an epiphany, sort of, you know, solving this intellectual problem. Made me float in air, you know, I was weightless. It was a nanosecond and then back to life. And I think that the rest of my life has been a quest to arrive at that feeling again. And sometimes when I do legal work, and especially when I win a case, I get very close to that feeling, but I never really get it 100% again.
You may get there very soon. So you are the founder of Cabinet Shefet, a law firm in Paris. What does your law firm actually do, and what does your role entail?
Well, you know, as you mentioned before, I do a lot of international law, and do specialize today, which I've done for the past 10 years, in internet law. Yeah. We're mostly talking about human rights. I think you mentioned that also, at least in the bio. Yeah. So it was pretty natural after doing the philosophical work, which was a lot on ethics, and then moving through international law, to concentrate on human rights law. Yeah. And I quickly realized that the battleground for human rights today, the 21st century, is no longer what it used to be, like dictatorships. In some countries, obviously it is, yeah. But not in Europe, where people are, you know, imprisoned arbitrarily and their heads cut off and things like that. It unfortunately still happens, but the real battleground for human rights today is the internet. The internet is where you see people's human rights trampled upon every second of the day. And I saw that about 10 years ago, this technology is a major, major threat to our basic human rights. And unfortunately, the striking the balance exercise on the internet is extremely challenging, because you always have one human right which seems to be invoked all the time, which is freedom of speech. Yeah. And so whenever you want to protect another human right, which is the right to dignity, integrity, privacy, life, and so on and so forth, you always encounter the challenge of free speech. I have been working on striking the balance between the two, and that's why I made the recommendation to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe that you mentioned, to have an Internet Ombudsman, which would kind of help strike that balance. Unfortunately, one of the worst, well, you know, let me ask you a question. Sure. What do you think, which right do you think is the right on the internet today that is most often violated?
The right of, the protection of privacy, and also the respect of human beings.
Well, yes, but there is another one. Yep. And when I say it, you'd say, oh, yes, of course. It's the presumption of innocence. Yes,
of course. I didn't do it on purpose.
The presumption of innocence is, to me, the most important of all human rights. Yeah. Because I don't want to live in a society where I have to prove that I'm innocent. It doesn't work. Yeah. The presumption of innocence is challenged every second of the day, every second of the day, on the internet. And unfortunately, judgment, public judgment, is not only fought by social media and what have you on the internet, it even creeps up in court cases. It even affects juries, it even affects judges.
Yeah.
And I'm very concerned about that risk to this basic human right, that if somebody says that you did something, well, it's almost politically incorrect to assume that you didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
So this is my main struggle today. I've made a few recommendations to the Department of Justice in Washington and to the European Commission on how to strengthen the respect of this basic and fundamental human right, which is the presumption of innocence.
Well, thank you for that. I remember discussing with you when you were starting this this whole procedures, and you actually have done a lot of good to us, to all of us users of the internet, and some of the things that have happened with major high tech companies are thanks to some of the work you've done. So, what in your trade, your activities makes you an international public speaker? I know you speak very, very regularly. So, where do you get the confidence to stand and speak, and how do you command the attention of the people that you speak to? You do it on the internet too, and I've seen you speak recently with another judge that was taking the opposite view, and she was based in New York. So, you know, tell me about that.
Well, first of all, I like it. I think that's kind of where you start. You have to like it. So of course, the second question is how do you grow into liking it? Yeah. But I like debating. I like very much debating. I think that, you know, I go so far as to say that if I lose an argument, I learn much more than the other guy.
Yeah.
So to me, the debate in itself is such a wonderful art. And it combines philosophy, law, general knowledge, rhetoric, everything. And it's really something that unfortunately we don't teach in school any longer, except these debating classes, which in Ivy Leagues have these big competitions every year. That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
In my opinion, in schools today, starting at the age of 6, when children start to get irritating, which means they question everything, you should have a debate every day. Every day, the school teachers have a debate. Whatever's in the newspaper, whatever happened yesterday in the schoolroom or whatever, and you just have somebody who's given the task of defending this position and somebody else that position.
Yeah.
Every day, train and get everybody on board. So even the children that never say anything, they have to, because it is the debate that will make them sure, that will make them confident, that will make them speak up, and that will form their career later. Don't be afraid of losing a debate. As I said before, if you lose it, you win it, because you learn more than the other guy.
Yeah, indeed.
So I love that. You know, I'm ready to debate any time of the day and the night you want on any subject, because you can always find something to say about anything, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that when you speak, of course, it's not the same as a debate, even though sometimes it is, because you have a Q&A afterwards. But you got to know what you talk about,
yeah,
which is when you speak, right?
Yeah.
So that's really sine qua non. You got to know your subject.
Yeah.
And once you feel that you know your subject, then you feel at ease, you know. And don't be afraid of, you know, even if you know your subject, you may say something stupid, whatever that means, whatever stupid means. Don't be afraid of that.
Yeah.
You just laugh at yourself, you know. So what? So what? If you're afraid of speaking up today, especially today, which is more a society of appearance that we've ever had in the history of civilization, you're going to be a loser.
Mm.
Because you have to speak up, otherwise you don't exist. Yeah. You don't exist. It's just like if you're not on page 1 on Google, you don't exist.
Yeah.
Your life today is an aggregate of data, and you don't get any data on yourself if you don't speak.
Yeah. Indeed, thank you for that. Great idea about debate. Something says, too bad it is only taught in very posh schools in the UK. Learning how to debate is key, linked to philosophy too. And somebody else says, exactly, this too shall pass. Very good point. So we have listeners from literally around the world. What legal and other advice would you like to give them? Particularly those who among them are aspiring lawyers and entrepreneurs?
Well, first of all, you know, whatever you do, whether you aspire to be a lawyer, entrepreneur, or whatever, take philosophy first. I know that today it's kind of like a luxury because as soon as you come out of school, you're going to start earning a living and you start this very stressful life, which unfortunately is the case for most people. But so do yourself a favor, at least take 6 months, you know, just study philosophy and nothing else, nothing else. Yeah. And if you study philosophy, there are like two big categories of philosophy. There are many subcategories. I mentioned logic. Okay, logic is interesting because it will take you straight to math. It's like a Newton math system, and it'll help you do computer engineering, coding afterwards, and so on. It'll help you use certain tools like Venn diagrams and others that will structure rational thought. But the other two categories that I would mention would be epistemology, which is really the knowledge of science. When is something science and when is it metaphysics? That will allow you to a very large extent to distinguish between fake news and real news. It'll give you the critical thinking which scientists really have developed over the ages. How do you distinguish between science and metaphysics? So that category of philosophical thought, which is epistemology, to me is absolutely key. And then, of course, there's ethics, which is foundational to whatever you want to do in society later, and especially if you want to do law. Yeah. So that's the first thing. That's the first thing. It's, as we say in French, you know, it's a passage obligé, right? You know, yes. In my opinion. And so afterwards, if you want to do law, of course, there are some legal fields that seem that you know, you want to make a lot of money, or what do you want to do? You know, if you want to make a lot of money, you're going to do A&M kind of stuff, which is terribly boring, in my opinion. Or do you want to make a difference? And do you want to work with people? Do you have certain ideals that you want to test in court? I think that the latter part is the most honorable part of being a lawyer. I think the first part comes very close to being an accountant, and it has absolutely no inspiring effect on me. But I'm sorry if I disparage someone there, but those, you know, as I said, my middle name is being controversial. So to me, being a real lawyer, and stress the word real, means that you fight for certain ideals and that you represent clients in order not just to get paid, but because you believe that you believe somewhere in justice. I mean, this is a really, really, really important word, and you want to fight for that. So if that's what you want to do, and if that's what you want to be a lawyer, you may not want to join one of the big law firms, because if you join one of the big law firms, you just have to generate a lot of timesheets. And you don't want to do that. You know what? I never did a timesheet in my life.
Wow. Lucky you.
Yes, I never did one, and I'm not going to start doing it. I will of course be able to report what I did with my time, and that's no problem whatsoever. But I don't write them down as I go along. Again, sometimes the client will ask me, how do I spend my time? And it's very easy for me to ask an assistant to look into what I've been doing, and then we know how much. But I don't do it because it's dangerous. Yeah. I learn almost just as much from my clients as they learn from me. Yeah. And I want to have time to speak with them over the phone. I want to have time to understand their business. I want to have time to understand their problems. Each and every client is a universe, just like you are a universe. Yeah. And I want to understand it. And if I need to switch on my clock and do timesheets, how do I do that? Yeah. So stay away from the big law firms, from this tyranny of timesheets, and either do your own thing or join a firm which fights for whatever ideals are close to your heart.
Thank you. Thank you. That's extremely interesting. We're going to go a little over time, but it's very, very interesting. So I want to go through a set of other questions. In the light of the major subjects you work on, IT law, cybersecurity, etc., what does innovation represent for you, and how do you continuously make sure that you're learning?
You mean technical innovation?
Yeah, technical innovation, or yes, and also, you know, in your own firm, in your own field of legal advancements.
Okay. Well, you know, of course we use technical means in terms of doing legal research case law and so on and so forth. Of course, that's very, very helpful. In the old days, you would have to go to the library and look stuff up, and then you probably wouldn't get the whole thing. And now you get it, it's at the tip of the finger of the hand. So that's, of course, that is extremely important. But one of the things that I'm working on right now is how to use AI in the legal profession.
Wow.
And especially using AI in the judiciary. And I recently wrote an article which was published with the American Law Institute on this particular subject. It's what we call legal analytics. So the thing is, to simplify a lot, if you look at the different judges and you look at how they have judged different cases, are you able to identify bias? And if you're able to identify bias, how do you then work that bias to your advantage? And that's technology. But frankly, I don't know whether I subscribe to that. It's an extremely difficult question. Maybe because we all know that AI has built-in bias.
Yeah.
The real question I'm asking myself is, if the judges have bias, what do I prefer? Do I prefer the bias of the judge, or do I prefer the bias of the AI? And that's a terribly difficult question. So when I look at technology, of course, it helps me a lot, but there are also some terrible challenges. And the worst part of technology today is, of course, that it falls into the, don't get me wrong, the wrong hands.
Yes.
Which means that it's getting controlled by a few corporations, which I think is the greatest threat that we are facing. The greatest threat that civilization today is facing is that all technology, important, disruptive technology, is acquired by 2 or 3 companies. That power we have never seen. We've had concentrations before, but never in the field of information to the level of the information and control. And I really dread the day when these do-good companies that fight for free speech and the rest of it will suddenly change their paradigm, either because the government will change it for them, or because the stock market will change it for them, or because somebody goes crazy. And you're not going to tell me that is not going to happen. Because if you're telling me that, you didn't read your history.
Yeah, you make some very good points, and actually, to some degree, scary. But that's the world in which we live, and we have to really face it. And thanks to good people like you, we get some level of protection. So working with internationally with a huge variety of people, companies, and cultures must have its charms and its pitfalls. What are some of the challenges and opportunities that you find in doing so, and in defending people and companies from around the world?
Well, working with different cultures is lovely, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's, as I said, every man, every woman is a universe. I don't understand why we fly to the moon or planet Mars. We've got the universes right in front of us. And we could learn so much more by, really, really, really studying the person sitting on the other side of the table.
Yeah.
So I love that. And the more different the culture, the more exciting it is. Of course, sometimes you'll meet people that have a cultural baggage that you really don't understand at all.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, I did the report for UNESCO on radicalization. And of course, I'd find it very difficult. I never met such individuals to understand their culture and their background and what they are, why they are doing what they're doing. Even if I would try, I would probably have great difficulty understanding how somebody could become radicalized to an extent that they would commit a terrorist act. But apart from such extremes, understanding where the other person comes from and his culture and his background is such a wonderful learning experience. I mean, to just meet a lot of people that agree with you all the time, that's kind of
boring. Yeah. Indeed.
Kind of boring, isn't it? Nothing happens and everybody agrees.
Yeah.
And that's also one of the problems today, that this political correctness, I mean, it kills everything. And people are just afraid of taking the opposite position. Because, what's going to happen to me? Like in 20 years, it's going to be on the internet that I said this and that. I'll never get a job in my life. I won't get a life insurance. My bank is going to kick me out. My wife is going to divorce me. Come on. You have to be able to express opinions that are not politically correct. And today, unfortunately, you can't do that. You can no longer do it. We live in a dictatorship of public opinion. And it's not even public opinion. It's 3% of people that inundate the internet, they believe is true, and you just have to abide by that. Otherwise, you're dead.
Yeah, yeah, good points. So you were born in Denmark, studied in Denmark and France. You have done a fair amount of work on racism, on the subject of racism. And in the face of the current discussions around race, diversity, inclusion, what are some of your insights?
I'd say that unfortunately, the world seems to be more divided than it's been, not forever, but since probably, I don't know, I can't. Let's just say since World War II, right? Yeah. I don't know whether that's a relevant distinction to make, but for the purpose of this discussion, at least division on the basis of race, religion, and ethnicity, and so on and so forth, has certainly grown, and it has certainly accelerated over the past 10 years. Now, why is that? I think that the internet has a lot to do with that, because people don't discuss other views anymore. They sit in their filter bubbles, and they only hear what people that agree with them believe. There is no debate, there's no marketplace of ideas, and you just get galvanized in your own prejudice, and it gets worse and worse. So this is one of the reasons, and of course, there may be certain politicians that find it helpful to their cause to speculate in creating and growing and reinforcing division. So unfortunately, and unfortunately, a lot of that division is based on race. It's something that I will never be able to fathom. I will never be able to understand what is the problem. I mean, what is the problem associated with race? I don't get what the problem is, and that is my main issue here. Because I'm also trying, as I said before, I try to understand, where the other guy's coming from, and I simply cannot fathom what his problem is.
Yes.
But there are people that have that problem, and it doesn't help to call them psychos. It's just another word that means nothing today, because everybody's a psycho if you want that. It's no longer got a medical significance. So. Yes, so I get having a law firm in Paris is great, right? Because it's with the history of France, we have people from all, from all over the world.
Yeah.
It helps a lot in working with people. At my firm we have, I don't know, probably 5 different ethnic categories, and that's fine, and speak probably 10 different languages. So yeah, I don't understand what the problem is, but it's becoming a growing problem, and whatever I can get away with it, I do what I can to stop it. I've been very active, as you probably know, on the hate speech laws in France, in Germany. Yeah. I'm a member of the UN expert group on hate speech and genocide, and I'm doing a lot of work on especially the internet. And the internet and its contribution to this, and at the same time, the platform's accountability. I'm also working on the advertisers and what their accountability is. We had the hate speech, stop hate speech for profit hashtag. Unfortunately, that had no effect whatsoever. I have to say that if you want to take a company like Facebook, I must say that they are trying to deal with this problem. I've been very pleased to see that some of the work that has been done over the past couple of years, including also some of the work that I've contributed to, has had a very salutary effect on platforms, and especially Facebook. They're really trying to do something about this. Let's just hope it's not going to be too late. By too late, I mean the virality of the hatred on the internet is such that even if Facebook will be able to stop it on their platform, they'll just go to some other platform.
Indeed.
Yeah. So this is a big problem that I'm working on.
Thank you for sharing that. Final questions is really around tips that you could give to our audience about public speaking. I was fascinated by the debate that you had with this lawyer. I can't remember the occurrence, but it was a few months ago, about public speaking, about the law, about business in general and entrepreneurship. So what kind of tips would you give to our audience, please?
Well, I think that apart from the fact that you got to know what you're talking about, and if you don't, then quickly change the subject. That's that's also kind of like an art, and try and get away with it. But I think that relate whatever you are speaking to the person that spoke before you and will speak after, if it's at a conference, so that you first of all you pay that person respect because you obviously heard what that person said, and it's not like you come in and you speak about something that had nothing to do with the rest of the conference or whatever it is. It's very effective, showing that there's kind of like a continuum between your pitch, your presentation, and what happened before. That's very, very, very important. So listen carefully to what the person said before you. And then the second thing is, put in a few jokes, but not ready-made jokes. Don't be a stand-up comedian. No. Jokes that come naturally, and be sure about your timing of those jokes. Say something funny, and then also that that could be. It's very easy to say that, but you can you get into that. You have a few ideas, and then you try and make a few funny points, and that's great. And then if you give a speech in a country which is not yours, follow the news in that country. So read their newspapers. You can do that on the airplane on the way there, and try and relate what you're speaking about to that local context. It's extremely efficient. First of all, it shows that you are interested in their local context, and that you know something that you could only know because you read it in the newspapers, right? Because it wasn't on CNN. And second, so there's the respect element in it, and there's also the fact that it immediately creates attention because it's front page in that particular country. So I always try to do that, try to find some story that I know everybody's interested in that happened yesterday in their country, and then relate whatever you speak to that particular thing. And then finally, don't be afraid of asking questions to the audience. Like I asked you before, what is the most important right, which is being trampled on the internet, right? Yeah. And we started a dialogue. And once you start asking the audience questions, I mean, by definition, you get their attention because they have to answer your question. Yeah. It shouldn't be a one-way street. Absolutely not. That's pretty boring. People are going to leave the room. So it should be a dialogue. Yeah. This is kind of like my experience.
Very, very enlightening. I like them all, but I will remember the fact that when you go to a country, just take the local newspaper, read it, and then relate it to your conference or to your speech. That's a very powerful one. I haven't heard this one before. Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you so much. But before we part, let me tell the audience that we're grateful for you coming and following us every week and seeing some extraordinary speakers like Dan. Next week, we will have somebody also quite exceptional, somebody who negotiates and mediates on conflicts. And he advises people around the world, but particularly in African countries, and also in Lille, France, where he lives. Kak Sanusi is a mediator and a specialist of public speaking that we will be glad to welcome here next week. Dan, my heart is full of gratitude. You're so engaging. Somebody just said, Valerie just said that the point you made is an engaging point about reading the local news. So thank you so very much for coming here today and sharing with our guests, with our public, all your knowledge. Thank you, Dan.
It's been a great pleasure, Gilles. I love what you're doing. You're very, very professional. You can count on me whenever you need me.
Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. Goodbye, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you very soon. I will finish on this word, glocalization. Glocalization. That's quite interesting coin of word based on what you said. Thank you and take care. Be safe, everyone. Bye-bye.